The parade ground had its own kind of heartbeat, a low rhythm made of boots striking dirt in perfect unison. Dust rose with every step, catching the early morning light and hanging in the air like smoke from a distant fire. Commands snapped sharp and clean, slicing through the cold dawn. 284 recruits moved as one body, shoulders squared, eyes forward, lungs burning but silent. Any sound out of place here was an invitation to pain. She stood in the third row, fourth from the left. Her uniform fit like it had been forged onto her frame. No loose edges, no careless folds. Sweat traced a slow line down her spine, but her face betrayed nothing. She had learned long ago that the ground sensed weakness the way predators sensed blood. The drill sergeant paced in front of the formation, boots crunching deliberately, each step a threat. His voice had already shredded 2 recruits that morning, leaving one trembling and another fighting back tears. He stopped without warning, head turning slightly, eyes locking onto her. The pause was small, almost invisible, but she felt it like a shift in pressure before a storm. "Step out," he barked. The command struck like a slap. A ripple of tension passed through the ranks, but no one moved except her. She stepped forward, heel to toe, stopping exactly where regulation demanded. Her gaze stayed fixed straight ahead, chin level, hands stiff at her sides. The wind tugged at the edge of her sleeve. Somewhere, a bird lifted off, startled by the sudden stillness. The drill sergeant circled her slowly, eyes scanning for flaws that didn't exist. He leaned in close enough that she could smell stale coffee and grit. His shadow swallowed her boots. He was looking for a crack, a tremor, a blink, a breath out of rhythm. He found none. Then his hand shot out. Fingers clamped around her collar, fabric bunching under his grip. The sound was small, just the whisper of cloth tightening, but it echoed across the field louder than any shouted command. The formation froze. Boots halted mid-shift, breath stopped halfway in. 280. 4 witnesses stared, their minds racing between fear and disbelief. No one touched a recruit like that unless they wanted a reaction. The drill sergeant leaned in, voice low, dangerous. "You think you belong here?" Her neck tightened where the fabric pressed against her skin. The instinct to react surged up hard and fast, a flash of muscle memory buried under years of discipline. She crushed it instantly, her breathing slowed, deliberate, controlled. She did not blink. She did not look at his hand. "Yes, Sergeant," she said, voice steady, almost calm. That steadiness unsettled him. His grip tightened slightly, enough to make the message clear. This was supposed to break her. This was supposed to remind everyone watching that rank ruled everything here, that power lived in the hands of those who shouted the loudest. Dust drifted past her face, sparkling in the sunlight. She felt time stretch, thin and fragile. In the corners of her vision, she could see the formation, wide eyes, clenched jaws, fear etched into faces that knew what usually followed moments like this. Her mind was quiet. She remembered another ground, another morning, another set of eyes watching her to see if she would fail. She remembered learning how control mattered more than strength, how silence could be louder than rage. She remembered being told that the hardest test was not the one that hurt your body, but the one that demanded you do nothing at all. The drill sergeant waited for the flinch that never came. A vein pulsed in his neck. His jaw tightened. For a split second, uncertainty crossed his face, quickly masked by anger. He leaned closer, so close that his brim nearly brushed her forehead. "Say it louder," he growled. She drew a breath, slow and measured, filling her lungs completely. When she spoke, her voice carried, not shouted, not defiant, just clear. "Yes, Sergeant." The air felt heavy, charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Somewhere behind her, a recruit swallowed hard. Another shifted weight and stopped himself at the last second. Still, she did not move. The drill sergeant's hand remained at her collar, but the control he thought he held was slipping. He felt it without understanding why. In front of him stood not fear, not arrogance, but something far more dangerous, absolute composure. And as the seconds dragged on, with 284 witnesses locked in silence, the ground itself seemed to wait, holding its breath for what she would do next. The silence didn't break, it sharpened. The drill sergeant's grip was still at her collar, but something had shifted, not in her, in him. His dominance, so reliable with others, felt suddenly fragile, like glass under pressure. He expected resistance or fear. What he faced instead was stillness so complete it unsettled him. She felt the exact moment his balance changed. It wasn't dramatic, no stumble, no visible mistake. Just a fraction of a second where his weight leaned forward instead of down, where confidence replaced caution. To anyone else, it meant nothing. To her, it was an open door. She moved. One controlled step forward, closing the space instead of retreating. Her left hand came up, not fast, not aggressive, just precise. 2 fingers pressed against the inside of his wrist, while her palm guided the joint the way it was never meant to go. At the same time, her shoulder turned slightly, aligning her center with his. The grip on her collar loosened instantly. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the formation as realization hit too late. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't rebellion. It was technique, clean, disciplined, exact. The drill sergeant's eyes widened as his wrist locked. Pain flashed, quick and unexpected, but worse than the pain was the shock. He hadn't been overpowered. He'd been out, positioned, out. Thought. Gasps turned into stunned silence. She held him there for less than a second, long enough to make the point, long enough for every witness to see that control didn't come from shouting or size. It came from mastery. Then she released him. Her hands dropped back to her sides. She stepped back to her original position with the same measured pace she'd stepped forward, boots aligned, spine straight, eyes forward, as if nothing at all had happened. The drill sergeant staggered half a step before catching himself. His wrist throbbed, but he didn't shake it. He didn't shout. He didn't move. 284 recruits stared, frozen between disbelief and awe. Some had mouths slightly open, others had forgotten to breathe. A few felt something unfamiliar bloom in their chests, hope mixed with fear. No one had ever seen that before. Regulation said a recruit should be screaming right now. Regulation said she should be on the ground, punished until she broke. Regulation said he should be roaring. Instead, the field was silent. The drill sergeant slowly straightened his uniform. His face was tight, not with anger, but with calculation. His eyes dropped, not to the ground, but to her chest, to the place where insignia would normally sit. He frowned. There was something wrong. The stitching, the cut, subtle details most would miss. Details that didn't belong to a standard trainee uniform. Details he'd only seen once before, years ago, under circumstances he still remembered with a mix of respect and unease. He looked at her again, really looked this time. The calm wasn't arrogance, it was restraint. His breathing changed, slower, controlled, the way it did when he realized he was standing at the edge of something far bigger than a simple power play. Around them, the recruits felt it too, the shift in the air, the sense that the rules they thought they understood were bending. "You," he said finally, voice lower than before. "What unit trained you?" She didn't answer immediately. Silence stretched, deliberate and heavy. When she spoke, it was just loud enough to carry. "Permission to speak, Sergeant." The words landed differently now. He hesitated, just for a heartbeat. Then, against every expectation, he nodded. "Granted." She didn't turn her head, didn't relax her posture. But there was a quiet confidence in her next words that sent a chill through the ranks. "I was trained to maintain order," she said, even when provoked. The implication hit like a wave. Whispers threatened to rise and died instantly under the weight of what everyone had just witnessed. This wasn't defiance. This was discipline taken to a level most of them had never imagined. The drill sergeant swallowed. For the first time that morning, he wasn't testing a recruit. He was reassessing a situation. And with 284 witnesses watching, the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Whatever she wasn't here to be broken. She was here for a reason, and whatever came next was going to change everything. The drill sergeant took one slow step back, then another, creating space as if the ground itself had demanded it. His face was unreadable now, stripped of theatrics, stripped of intimidation. He studied her like a puzzle he hadn't known he was holding. "Formation, hold," he ordered. No one moved. 280. 4 recruits stood locked in place, muscles screaming, minds racing. The morning air felt heavier, as if the sky were pressing down to listen. The drill sergeant reached toward her chest, then stopped himself. Instead, he nodded once. "Sharp, precise, respectful, state your rank," he said. The words detonated silently across the field. Recruits exchanged quick, stunned glances without daring to turn their heads. Rank, that wasn't a question asked of trainees. That was a question asked of equals, or superiors. She inhaled slowly, then answered, "Captain." The word landed like a physical blow. A visible shudder passed through the formation. A few recruits felt their knees weaken. Others stared straight ahead, afraid that any movement would expose their disbelief. A captain, standing among them, taking orders, enduring treatment meant to break the unbreakable. The drill sergeant snapped to attention so fast his boots struck the ground in a sharp, echoing crack. His hand came up in a salute, perfect, instant, unquestioned. "Captain on deck," he called out. 284 bodies reacted as one. Salutes shot up in unison, crisp and instinctive, even as shock rippled through them. The sound of synchronized movement thundered across the parade ground. She returned the salute calmly. "I was ordered to observe," she said, voice steady, "and to intervene only if discipline crossed into failure." The drill sergeant lowered his hand slowly. His earlier aggression now felt distant, almost unreal. "And did it?" he asked. Her gaze remained forward. "Yes, Sergeant," briefly. There was no accusation in her tone, no triumph, just fact. A long pause followed. Wind swept across the field, lifting dust and carrying it through the ranks. Somewhere, a flag snapped against its pole. The drill sergeant nodded once more. "Understood, ma'am." He turned to the formation. "You just witnessed control under pressure," he said, voice carrying now firm and clear, not strength, not volume, control. The recruits listened like their lives depended on it. "She didn't break rank," he continued. "She didn't seek power. She waited until action was necessary and ended it without chaos." He faced her again, lesson received. She stepped back into the formation, seamlessly reclaiming her place among them. To an outsider, she looked like any other recruit again, but nothing was the same. As training resumed, boots moving in perfect rhythm, the recruits marched with something new burning in their chests. They had come expecting to learn how to endure force. Instead, with 284 witnesses frozen in time, they learned what true authority looked like when it didn't need to shout. And none of them would ever forget the day a collar was grabbed, and discipline answered back in silence.